Hello everyone and welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name is Angela Andrew and today we're going to be talking about best practices for organizing your folders. This is something we get asked about a lot and there's a lot of different ways to do it, so we're going to talk about some of the options that are available and I'm going to show you what I do personally in my own library. Hopefully that'll give you some ideas of how to proceed and get your own libraries organized and set up to be future proof. So before we jump into today's topic, I do want to let you know about some of our other events that we have going on. We have daily live sessions with Lori. She's here today helping out in the chat, and she is talking about importing and organizing, setting up new devices, sharing, and search. It's a different session every day of the week. Those are at 9:30 a.m. every day. You're welcome to jump into those if you have specific questions on those topics. She also hosts a session called Ready, Set, Go, which we're doing for the rest of the month. That's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific. Starting in December, we're going to be moving that up an hour to 3 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully that's a better time for you guys. Let us know in the chat what time of day works best for you, because we're always looking at the stats, trying to figure out what is the best time for you guys. I know there's people who join these sessions from all around the world, and we want to make sure that there's something available there for everybody. I also host live Q&A sessions on Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. You're welcome to jump into those. Those are available to people of all user levels with Mylio, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been with us for a while. It's a place where you can come ask questions about anything photography, family history, editing, anything Mylio. Really is fair game, and I'll do my best to help with whatever issues you've encountered or questions you may have on best practices. Today, we're going to be doing our coffee break. We have these every Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, and they are different topics every week. We have a short presentation for 15-20 minutes, give or take, and then there's time for open Q&A after that as well. And it doesn't have to be on the topic of the day. You can ask me anything as well. So this week, we're talking about that folder organization. Next week, we've had a lot of requests for photo editing sessions, so we're going to do one with editing with an external editor called Luminar Neo. Some of you have requested this specifically. It's a really cool program with a lot of great editing tools in there. So we're going to talk about round trip editing with Luminar Neo and Mylio Photos. So whether you use Luminar or any other external editor, hopefully this session will be useful to you. If there's other editors that you use that you'd like us to demo, I'm happy to give those a try and see if we can work in some sessions, especially as we're planning out sessions for 2025. I can't believe we're already planning 2025. That also brings me to not next week, but the week after that. That is the Thanksgiving holiday week here in the US. And Lori and I are both taking that week off, so there will be no live events from us that week. I think we will have a webinar early in the week from Rich Harrington, so that'll be really cool. We'll get you guys information about that as soon as we have that available. But otherwise, our regular sessions like Ready, Set, Go, Q&A, coffee break will be paused for that week and will resume the first week of December. So with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let me go ahead and jump into our presentation for today. So we're going to be talking about best practices for folder organization. And this is something we get asked a lot about because there's a lot of different ways to do it. And chances are you probably started out with a good intention, maybe got another idea, you tried something else, and maybe somebody over here said you should do it this way, and you probably have some conflicting organizations going on. So we're going to talk about how to decide and create a folder structure that works for you. We're going to talk about best practices for building and maintaining that, and then how to get the media that you have into that folder structure. These are all big things, and I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible because it's kind of a big topic. So the first thing I want to review with you are some of the different options out there for different organization. And one very common one is to do a year-month event. Excuse me. That's where you put in your top level folder is the year. And then you can use a number before the month name if you like or not, but it does help keep them in chronological order because they are not alphabetized. So you need to use the months of the year. They are not going to come up in the right alphabetical order. So adding that number at the beginning, so 01, 02, 03, ahead of the name helps keep them in a really nice chronological order for the year. And then underneath that, you can have a kind of a general folder for every event. So you can say, I have pictures from New Year's. I have pictures of my winter hike. I have pictures from the family vacation we took. And you can go ahead and put those under events under those time frames. So that's really kind of a hybrid of a straight date or straight event based. And it's a really nice way to do things. Another way to do it is strictly event based. This isn't really my choice, but it's one that a lot of people use. So I just wanted to present this out there, and you guys have all of the information so you can choose a system that works best for you. So in this case, you'd have your top level folder would be events, and then you might have a subfolder for family vacations, for holidays, for birthdays, and then for different options underneath that. So like under Christmas, you might even have another subfolder that is 2023 Christmas, and then you'll have one for this year, 2024 Christmas. Whatever works for you in that. And that's one way you can kind of break those up and have things categorized by event. Now, another option is by project. And I know a lot of people, I think Lori does some level of project-based folder organization in her library. Our head of support also does this with his travel photos and his on land and underwater photos. He's got separate folders for those types of things. So you can do it by project. You can have wildlife photography, and then under that you can have birds, mammals, and so forth, and even break them up by year if you'd like. And then have something for, say, your fine art photography, and that's where you'd have your water and your urban decay and any other types of fine art you do. And so these are some of the projects that you might be working on. A lot of Mylio Photos users also organize family history projects, and you're working with not only your modern pictures, but maybe pictures that family members have given you, things that you've scanned. And that's where this type of organization with the family line comes in handy. So you can have a family history folder and then have your different branches of the family. And I would keep those rather broad, because the closer these things come together, the more you're going to have overlap between one and the other. So you want to keep them kind of broad, and that's another way that you can organize your folders. So from here, I want to jump in to show you what I do in my own library. So I kind of loosely have two categories and two different types of organization that I work with. The first one is photos that I've captured, so things in my lifetime from the time that I was young, had film cameras, even some of those are images that I scanned, and then further into digital images that I've captured through my adulthood. I then have a section here for family history, and these are pictures that have been either shared with me or scans that I've taken from family albums and so forth. So I've broken these into two kind of categories, because I don't necessarily want these family history ones by date, because that can get really convoluted, especially when we're working with what we call fuzzy dates, the non-specific dates in Mylio. I might have some that are, all I know is the year. Some of them I know a season because there's a Christmas tree in the background, or things like that. So these are very non-specific over here in a lot of cases. The stuff that I've captured myself, I have a much better idea of when those happen. So even if it was scans that I took when I was young of those film photos, I'm pretty sure I know roughly when those happen. So I can put in, a year for those at least. And then everything that's digital has that digital metadata built into it, which means it automatically can be easily sorted by year. Now, the way I've taken to doing things with my by year photos is I've broken things down by decade, because this makes it a little bit easier to browse. So underneath 1990s, I'd have 91, 92, 93, and so forth. And then underneath each one of those, so you'll see here what I have for 2020s. I haven't made a 2020s folder. I will once we get to the 2030s. But right now I want to see those folders kind of at a higher level, and they're easier to get to. And then underneath each year, this is how I do my subfolders. So I'll do a date, the date that the picture was captured, and then a very short description of what's in that folder. And this makes it easy to see by date. So if I'm thinking of, okay, when did this happen? I know this was in October of 2024. And then I can easily glance at this description and get an idea of what's in that folder. So whether I'm looking in Mylio or whether I'm looking through my file system, this makes it really easy for me to find things. And I am also one of those people who finds things based on when they happen. I'm kind of numbers oriented. So this works really, really well for me. But, when I don't have a date specific in mind, having this little description is immensely helpful. The other thing that having a description like this helps is that it's searchable in Mylio. So if I don't remember exactly when I went to the Eastern Sierras, let's say it's a few years from now, like what year was that? I can just type in Eastern Sierras And then all of my folders that have this description are going to pop up. So that's really helpful to me. Now, for my family history photos, I have two main branches of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side. And as I get more pictures being sent to me by, let's say, my husband's family, his uncle or his mom, I might start one here for my husband's side of the family as well. But right now, it's just my mom and my dad's side because that's the bulk of the scanned images that I've been gifted. So I've broken that down very simply. I do have some subfolders under these that are very loosely organized, and I'll show you those in a moment. But right now, I'm really focused on trying to get things either into my Campbell side of the family or the Evans side of the family. So let's go ahead and jump into Mylio, and I'm going to show you what this looks like live here. So I've got my Mylio open. I am in the folders view. I'm going to go ahead and close up the info panel here for a second. And I'm going to close up the side panel so we can get a good view of what's going on. Let me make this a little smaller so we can see more on the screen. These are the actual folders that Mylio knows about, that Mylio is watching and has knowledge of. So there's a lot of different stuff going on here. I've got my main folders here in my Mylio Photos library, my pictures coming in from my cell phone. I've got the Mylio inbox, which is kind of a to-do list folder. And this photos folder, many of you probably have a Mylio pictures folder. This is my version of that. So I have my main photos, and this is the main repository of my stuff, my digital images that I've captured over the years, plus a lot of scanned images from earlier in my life. Now down here, I've got pictures from social media. Eventually, I might integrate those into my main archives up here. I'm not sure right now. I'm kind of content to keep those separate. As I bring pictures in from my fast photo, you can see this folder is empty because everything I've brought in here has already been sorted into its appropriate place. I do have some other images down here from another computer from that fast photo that I can sort. We might do some of that today. And a few other linked folders that are just kind of general things that, for projects I'm working on. Now down here is where I have my linked folder for my family history. Let's go ahead and jump into that. There's my Campbell family and my Evans family. And this is where I'm starting to put things that I'm working on for those family history projects. Let's go ahead and go back up one level and let me show you what that main repository for my modern photos looks like. So let's go here into photos. And you'll see here's the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and then I go to 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. You'll also notice I have a bunch of other categories in here for kind of miscellaneous stuff, and again, stuff that needs to be organized. So even those of us who do this for a living, we still have pictures that we come across that, we're like, we just throw them in the library, we'll deal with it later. So a lot of these need to be sorted and put into their rightful places. And that's what these additional folders are. Some of them will stay where they are. Like, I created a folder of AI art that I've made. That doesn't really need to get integrated in with my photos because that's kind of a different category of stuff. Same with like this folder of memorabilia. That doesn't need to go into my dated stuff. But many things, like I have this other Angela's photos here, and they're just some random photos I think I had on different backups that need to be integrated in to the main archives. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the presentation again. And I see that there's a question here. Terry says, are the photos in my photo library linked or copied? That's a great question. It's a mix of both. Most of my folders were originally linked, but some of them have been copied in, especially when I take pictures from my big camera. When I have a memory card, I copy those into my library. And that puts them into a folder that Mylio already knows about. So for instance, if I take pictures and I want them to go into my 2024 folder, I'm going to copy those images into a new folder here in this folder structure. If I have another folder of images, let's say somebody gives me a hard drive and I'm not sure where I want to put those yet, I might take that hard drive and link that folder. That brings it into my library. That tells Mylio, watch this folder, pay attention to the stuff that's there. And then it'll show it separate from the rest of my stuff. And then if I want to, I can go ahead and integrate those things in there. Linda's asking here, what is Mylio lost and found? So every once in a while, if Mylio has a catalog glitch and you do maybe a catalog repair and there were things that kind of got jumbled in the sync process, maybe a couple of things just didn't sync up quite right, you might end up with this Mylio lost and found folder. And it's things that Mylio was probably in the middle of transitioning when maybe I shut down my machine or something like that. and they're just pictures that I need to reintegrate back into my main hierarchy. So that's all those are. They're just things that I need to reorganize. All right. Lisa says, if the folder files are linked, do you have to always have that drive attached to the computer? Yes. In most cases, yes. So if that's the only place that those pictures live, then absolutely. If you have a vault or more than one vault that are already connected, and you give time for that linked folder to synchronize, that synchronized folder will also be replicated to your vaults. Once that happens, then you don't need to necessarily have that linked folder drive always connected, because it's always going to live on those vaults as well. So that's an option, but there's like different configurations you can have that change the way Mylio works. In general, the way that I suggest people set things up is to link a folder if you already have something organized exactly the way you want it, and then add on that vault to go ahead and replicate that. If you are trying to get everything consolidated into one place, make use of that Mylio Pictures folder. That's still a folder that exists on your hard drive, and Mylio already knows that, so you can just copy things in there, and that helps you consolidate things into one place. But everybody's goals are a little bit different. So hopefully that answers your question, Lisa. I know there's a lot of caveats. All right, let's jump back over here into the presentation and talk about some best practices for folder organization. I mentioned that when I use my year, month, date, I append that little description on there that tells me briefly what's in that folder. And descriptive folder names are incredibly helpful. So if you have the opportunity to add a little description, I think that's a really good thing to do. And so using that descriptive folder name is probably best practice number one. The second one is be consistent. And this is where I think a lot of people kind of end up with a mess, is because you maybe start one way and then somebody says, oh, well, you should do it this way. And then you end up trying that. So then you have the original hierarchy and now you have a new hierarchy. What I would suggest is pick a system and stick with it. That's going to be the best thing for you. There's no one perfect system. Like I showed you here, what I've got going, it's far from perfect. Actually, let me go back here. It's far from perfect, but it works for me. And as long as I stick with this particular format for at least the new pictures I'm bringing in, it works brilliantly. There's always going to be exceptions, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but keeping that consistency is really going to make a big difference. I also want to encourage people to avoid overly deep folder structures. So what that means is, as you go into your folder structures, how many subfolder levels do you have? Keep those from going too terribly deep, because that can make things really hard to find. Staying a little bit more shallow with that can be very helpful. All right. If you're using Mylio Photos to organize your folders, you have some additional tools at your fingertips that can help you. If you're more event driven or purpose driven, project driven, that's where categories and keywords can come in really helpful. So you can have a date-based folder system and then make use of things like categories and keywords to keep track of those other types of descriptions. So categories are great to mark things as personal, work, family history, or any other project or broad category that you might be working with. Keywords are awesome for those smaller words, so birthday, vacation, wedding, sunset, travel, those kinds of things. Very helpful to add as a manual keyword. So those are kind of my suggestions for making use of both those metadata tools and your folder structure to be able to find things really easily. I also want to recommend creating a holding area for things to be organized. So that can be scans to organize, that can be your Mylio inbox. The Mylio inbox is already put into Mylio for you, so you can drag and drop pictures into that from your file system, and that becomes kind of a to-do list for things that you need to organize. You can also create other folders, that are maybe in a different place in your hierarchy, so you know that that's something when you have time, that maybe here's a bunch of scanned photos that you need to deal with. So having that to-do list can be really helpful as well. Let's go ahead and talk about moving things around. So let's say you've created this folder structure. Now you need to get things into it. So there's a handful of different ways that you can move things in Mylio. I prefer to use most often this move to folder, or actually move to folders down here. But the one caveat here I want to emphasize is when you're moving things, as much as possible, do this from within the Mylio Photos application, not in the file system. If you start moving things around in the file system, Mylio can get confused and it can cause a mess. So moving things from within Mylio Photos, it will also move them in the file system for you, is the best practice here. So there are a handful of different ways you can move things in Mylio. You've got the move to folder command. You can use the Mylio clipboard, which we did a whole coffee break on a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in learning more about the Mylio clipboard, I encourage you to watch that. You can drag and drop with the left panel navigation, which I find incredibly helpful as well. And then as you're going through and moving things around, you might have a folder that, you know, this folder already has everything in it that you want it to be, but you want to change the name of that to be in your existing folder structure. So I'll show you how to quickly rename folders as well. Let's go ahead and jump into Mylio. And I'm going to clean up some of the pictures that I have here. So I want to start over here with my all photos, and I'm going to go up here to the top of the list. And my mom recently sent me a handful of images. These are all scans that she has from her albums, and I want to move them into the right place. So let's go ahead and start with one of these family photos here. This is, I'm guessing probably a Thanksgiving or birthday or I don't know, some family event. Everyone was gathered together, and this was at my grandparents' house. And you can't see me very well, but that's me right there. I'm guessing my mom is the one taking the picture. So this one's pretty easy. I would move this into the Evans family folder. So what I'm going to do here is just right click on this image and say move to folder. And then I can go down to that family history folder that I have. There it is, family history and Evans family, and choose select. And that's going to go ahead and relocate that image from, I think it came into my camera roll, so it's probably sitting in my Apple Photos folder. It now moved it into that appropriate folder in my family history section. And then we have questionable ones where you might have both sides of the family in the picture. So in this image, this is where you have to kind of make a judgment call and choose how you want to handle your own photos. So I've gone through and I face tagged everyone in here. So if I turn on my face tagging, all of the names are here, but primarily this is my dad's side of the family, so the Evans side. But my Campbell relatives are in here too. My Campbell grandparents obviously came down for this family meal as well. So whose do I put this into? Because it's primarily my Evans side of the family, I'm going to go ahead and put that into the Evans family part. But knowing that because I have both of my Campbell grandparents here tagged, I can always go to their sections in the people view, find this image, and if I just do a search, I can find it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off that face tag, right click on this, and again, we're going to move to folder. And here under family history, let's go ahead and choose Evans family and select. And that goes ahead and moves it to the proper place in my folder structure. Now let's take a look at some of these other images that I have kind of disorganized in my system here. I have this Angela's Photos, which has just some random pictures that need to be moved. And luckily they're in here by date. So I don't even remember how these got out of the normal organization. But I'm going to go here into my 2015 and let's go ahead and grab this one here of pumpkin. Now, if I open up my info panel, this I find very helpful. So with digital images, and if you're using a dated folder structure, this can make your life a lot easier when you have to move things. So I'm going to go here into info and click on that, click on the picture, and I can see that this picture is from December 8, 2015. I have a December 8, 2015 folder. That's just where that needs to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I can right click and choose the move to folder option. Or since I'm here in my folders view, I can go here to the navigation and open up my folder tree. So if you prefer to do a drag and drop, you can absolutely do that. So I'm going to go up here to my main photos, and we want to be in the 2010s. There's my 2015, and we're looking for December 8th. So let's go ahead and scroll down to December 8th. There's December 8th right there. I can grab that picture and just drag it and drop it over there. Confirm that I want to move it. And now that one has been reorganized where it needs to go. I can go ahead and hit that back arrow. I now have an empty folder. I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone, let Mylio sync up for a moment, but then I can come back and I can delete that. Let's go ahead and do one more here. I'm going to go here and see these ones from November 25th. And I'm just going to do a Command or Control A to select all of those images. And again, we can go here and find November 25th. There's November 25th right there. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab and drag those and move them in there. And now that folder has been emptied, those pictures have been reorganized, and I now have 2 folders that I can get rid of. Let's go ahead and do one more. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this image. This was from November 23. And I'm just going to go up here to there's November 23 right there. Grab that image, and I can drag and drop that right into that folder. Now that that's had a chance to kind of catch up, what I'm going to do is just grab those 3 folders, right click on those, they're empty, and I can say delete folders. And that's going to go ahead and clean those up out of my library, and I've just reorganized a nice little chunk of images. So that's how you move things around. Now, if you have a folder that you already have organized the way you want, but you want to maybe just rename it, you can go ahead and grab a folder and click on that, open up your info panel. If you're not seeing that, click on that little eye. With the folder selected, you can just type here in the folder name field. You can go ahead and change that name to whatever you want. And the nice thing is you can actually take these folders, and if you see a whole folder that you need to move, again, you can grab that folder and drag and drop it. And you can also use that right click and move that entire folder to another folder. So you have a lot of different options for reorganization and getting things into the right place. So I just want to remind you one more time that we've got our Q&As next week on Tuesday and Thursday. Make sure you check out Lori's programs at 9:30 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. They're both fantastic. And then we hope to see you again for coffee break next week, where we're going to talk about photo editing, which is one of my favorite things to discuss. So I hope to see you then. With that, I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.